There's a thought many people carry in silence, never saying it out loud, but feeling its weight like a stone in their hearts. My child doesn't respect me the way they used to. And with that thought, every cold gesture, every harsh word, every long silence seems to confirm it. But what if I told you that respect doesn't vanish overnight? It fades slowly, through the absence of certain invisible habits. For years, I've listened to hundreds of mothers, strong, generous, tireless women who reached this stage feeling like they had given everything. And yet somewhere along the way, something changed. Their bond with their children grew distant, sometimes tense, sometimes just absent. I'm no longer a priority, they confide in me. I feel ignored, like I no longer matter. And behind each of those words lies a story of unrecognized love, of devotion unreturned, of respect that seemed to evaporate without reason. But today, I want to tell you something different, because there's a quiet truth that almost no one talks about. There are habits, simple, concrete, everyday habits, that can rebuild that bridge. It's not about changing your child or demanding they go back to who they used to be. It's about reclaiming your place from a new kind of strength, because respect isn't begged for, it's inspired. What you're about to hear doesn't involve yelling, imposing, or demanding. You don't need complicated techniques or miracle solutions. What you need is to remember what you're capable of creating when you live your life with dignity, clarity, and self-respect. We're going to talk about 5 habits, 5 actions that, when practiced consistently over time, have the power to awaken your child's attention once more, not as an obligation, but as a natural response to a presence that becomes impossible to ignore. If you've ever wondered what happened to that once strong bond, if you've ever felt like your place in your child's life has become small, secondary, almost invisible, stay with me. Because this journey isn't just informative. It's an invitation to reconnect with your strength and to let that spark something new in them as well. The first habit that can help your child start respecting you again is one we often forget without realizing it: putting yourself first without guilt. For a long time, especially if you're a mother, you were taught that being good meant forgetting about yourself, that respecting others meant giving in, staying quiet, always being available. And that message ran so deep it became a way of life, being there for everyone, solving, supporting, and leaving yourself for last. But respect doesn't come from silent sacrifice. It comes from the strong, clear presence of someone who values herself. I've seen many women reach their 70s with a bitter feeling. I was always there for everyone, but now that I need someone, no one's around. And when we dig deeper, what we find isn't resentment. It's sadness. A quiet sadness that doesn't scream, but is felt in the body, in the spirit, in the will to live. And behind that sadness is a painful truth. When you put yourself at the end of the line, you teach others to do the same. Setting boundaries, saying no, recognizing your needs, protecting your space. It's not selfish. It's a quiet way of teaching others how to treat you. Children don't respect someone who fades away. They respect someone who stands firm. And it doesn't matter how old you are or how many mistakes you think you've made, every day is still a chance to rewrite that relationship. This habit of returning to your center can begin with very small things. Choosing what you want to eat, dressing for you, saying, "I can't today," without needing to explain, listening to your emotions before reacting to outside demands. And holding on to all of that, not for praise, but for the simple joy of living truthfully. It's not an act of rebellion. It's an act of self-love. And that kind of love, when it becomes steady and real, begins to awaken something different in those around you. Because a child, even as an adult, still looks for the example of a mother who honors herself And when they find it, something in them shifts without you ever having to ask. Stay with me, because the next habit touches a part of us we often keep hidden. But when it's awakened, it can transform not only your relationship with your child, but the way you see yourself. The second habit that can help your child start respecting you again isn't about words, it's about presence. And by presence, I don't just mean being physically there. I mean inhabiting the moment with a quality of attention that's become incredibly rare. Listening without interrupting, looking without judging, being there without expecting anything in return. That kind of presence is rare, it's powerful, and it's deeply transformative. Many adult children feel that their mothers no longer understand them, that everything they say will be corrected, questioned, or compared to the past, and so instead of speaking, they pull away. Instead of sharing, they shut down, not because they don't love you, but because they feel there's no space for who they are today. I've worked with many women who, without realizing it, keep alive a way of communicating that once served them when their children were little, giving advice, correcting, warning, insisting. But that style, even when it comes from love, becomes a barrier as children grow older, because what they need now is not direction, it's understanding. A mother who practices the habit of presence learns to be silent without losing her authority. She learns to look at her child with curiosity, not expectation. She learns to say, "Tell me more," instead of, "I told you so." And while it might seem like a subtle shift, it changes everything. Because when someone feels truly heard, when they feel they can be themselves without needing to defend it, they begin to open up. And respect is born from that openness. Science has already shown that mindfulness, the ability to be fully present in the moment without judgment, even changes brain chemistry. It reduces anxiety, improves empathy, strengthens bonds. But beyond the data, what I've seen in real life is even more telling. When a mother truly listens, without interrupting, without jumping ahead, without correcting, her child starts to see her differently, because they recognize a kind of strength that doesn't shout, but stays steady. This habit can begin with something as simple as a conversation with no phone in sight, as letting your child finish their thought before you reply, as noticing the urge to correct and choosing not to. These aren't small gestures, they're paths back home. And every time you choose to be present, you're saying to your child, "Who you are matters more to me than what you do." And even if they never say it out loud, they feel it. Get ready, because the next habit will touch an even deeper place, a way of communicating with yourself that can shift the energy of everything around you. The third habit that can help your child start respecting you again is to stop speaking to yourself with inner contempt. Yes, with yourself. Because whether you realize it or not, the way you treat yourself on the inside seeps into every gesture, every look, every silence you share with others. And your children, even those who no longer live with you, can feel it. I've met many older women who look in the mirror and think only of what they no longer are. They tell themselves they're old, useless, a burden. They compare themselves to who they once were, to what they could have been, to what others seem to be. And without noticing, they build an inner monologue filled with shame, guilt, and defeat. That monologue doesn't just hurt them, it poisons the atmosphere around them. Because a mother who speaks harshly to herself cannot truly transmit respect. She might have the best intentions, but if her energy is rooted in low self-esteem, resignation, or self-neglect, it shows. And a child, even if they never say it, can sense it. And sometimes, without meaning to, they respond from that same place, with disdain, impatience, or distance. Not because they don't love you, but because they're mirroring what you're unconsciously putting out. Breaking that cycle begins with one decision: Never again speak to yourself like an enemy. Stop repeating those phrases that may sound harmless, but slowly extinguish you from within. I'm so clumsy. There's no point in saying anything. I'll just stay quiet. I don't have anything left to offer. Those aren't humble words. They're old wounds speaking, and they deserve to be replaced by a different voice, one that remembers everything you've lived, everything you've given, and all that you still have to offer through your wisdom and tenderness. Did you know there are studies showing that the words we use toward ourselves can actually change our heart rate and brain chemistry? People who speak to themselves with compassion have more resilience, greater mental clarity, and a noticeable energy. It's not just a nice idea, it's science, and it's also life's wisdom. This habit, treating yourself with inner respect, is built day by day. It begins with something as simple as noticing what you say to yourself when you make a mistake. Do you punish yourself? Insult yourself? Quietly humiliate yourself? Then start practicing something different. Place your hand over your heart and gently say what you'd say to a friend. And if that's too hard, at least stop the judgment. That pause is already a seed of respect. And when your child sees you speak to yourself with dignity, they will begin, without knowing how or why, to respond with that same energy. Because no one can maintain contempt in front of someone who treats themselves with love. In the next part, we'll touch on a more visible, yet just as deep, dimension. How your everyday decisions can help you reclaim your place without ever demanding it. Because sometimes, small actions hold more power than any speech. The fourth habit that can help your child start respecting you again is making visible decisions that affirm your worth, without asking for permission to do so. And I say visible because it's not enough to feel dignity on the inside. That dignity needs to show up in concrete actions that the world, and especially your child, can see. Many times, after decades of silent giving, older women fall into a kind of life pause. Not because they're physically tired, but because they no longer feel entitled to make choices for themselves. They think their desires are frivolous, that their needs no longer matter, that they must wait for others to make space for them. But waiting doesn't earn you recognition. What earns respect is claiming your autonomy, even in small ways. I've seen how a woman's energy shifts when she decides to go for a walk alone, when she chooses how she wants to dress, when she signs up for a class just because it interests her, when she says, "I'm not cooking today," when she sits down to read in silence even though others expect something from her. These aren't acts of rebellion, they're acts of affirmation. Each one sends a very clear message. I'm still alive, I'm still choosing, I'm still here, with a voice and with desire. And that message, even if you don't say it out loud, your child hears it. At first they may feel uncomfortable, question you, call you selfish, but if you persist, not out of anger, but out of love, something in them will begin to shift. Because they'll see that you're not reacting, you're choosing. And choosing, at your age with calm and without excuses, is an act deeply worthy of respect. Visible decisions can also be symbolic, like redecorating a corner of your home just for you, moving your favorite chair to face the sunset, wearing that perfume you saved for special occasions. Each of these choices is a reminder to yourself and to everyone around you that your story isn't over. You still have chapters to write. Studies show that when older adults make intentional and joyful choices, it activates brain circuits related to self-esteem and a sense of purpose. And when that's activated, it doesn't just lift your mood. It strengthens your immune system, improves sleep, and boosts mental clarity. All of that begins when you stop waiting for external permission and start honoring yourself in everyday life. So if any part of you still thinks it's too late to do something different, let me tell you, it's not too late. It's urgent. Because every decision made from self-love teaches others how to treat you. And that includes, most of all, your children. The next habit is subtler, more intimate, but perhaps the most powerful of all, because it touches a space we don't always see, yet it defines how others see us, your ability to believe in your voice again. Let's go there. The fifth habit that can help your child start respecting you again is using your voice with intention, without fear of making others uncomfortable. Not to correct them, not to lecture, not to impose, but to clearly express what you feel, what you need, what you dream of. Because a mother who stays silent out of habit starts to disappear from her children's daily hearts, even if she's still alive. Many older women have spent decades filtering what they say to avoid conflict. They've learned to be careful, diplomatic, cautious, to the point of silence. But over time, that caution turns into invisibility, and respect feeds on presence, on a voice that's heard, that's felt, that carries its own tone. I remember Elvira, a 78-year-old woman who once told me something I'll never forget. When my children were little, I talked all day long. When they grew up, I started measuring every word. And now that they're adults, they listen to me as if I have nothing important left to say. She said it with sadness, but also with a new clarity, because she understood that, without realizing it, she had slowly dimmed her own voice. And yet, when she began to reclaim her way of speaking, not by raising it, but by speaking from her truth, something changed. She began to name what she needed, to share what she thought, without seeking approval, to say, "I didn't like that. I'd prefer this. This is how I see it." And instead of rejection, she encountered surprise. And then, little by little, she was heard. Because her voice wasn't asking for permission. It was simply saying, "I'm here." From neuroscience, we know that using your voice with honesty and clarity activates areas of the brain linked to identity and belonging. In other words, speaking your truth makes you feel more alive, more connected, more whole. And that wholeness is contagious. It inspires. This habit can begin with simple phrases. "I felt lonely today." "I miss you. It made me happy that you called. I didn't like that tone." It's not about complaining. It's about revealing your inner world without shame. Because when your child can see your full humanity, not just your role as a mother, not just your quiet patience, something in them begins to shift. And what used to be routine can turn into admiration. Your voice is a bridge, and every time you use it with intention, you're rebuilding a path that might have seemed lost. And that's far more powerful than you might think. Now, with everything we've shared, it's time to step into a practical space. Because these habits aren't just ideas, they're lived paths. Let's explore how you can start today in simple ways to transform that relationship from within. Because respect can't be demanded, it must be cultivated. And you can begin that cultivation right now. Now that we've explored these 5 habits, each one a seed of renewed respect, you might be asking yourself, what if I try all this and it doesn't work? What if my child doesn't respond? What if I end up feeling rejected, invisible, ignored all over again? That's a valid question. Because when a mother decides to shift something in her relationship with her child, even when it comes from the deepest love, she exposes herself. She opens up. She becomes vulnerable. And for someone who's been strong her whole life, that vulnerability can feel like weakness, but it's not. Let me tell you something I've seen again and again in women your age. The greatest obstacles don't come from outside. They're not your children. It's not their personalities, their busy lives, or their old wounds. The real obstacle is the fear of trying again, the fear that it's too late, The fear that your new voice will sound strange, that your boundaries won't be respected, that your presence won't be enough. That fear shows up in many forms. Sometimes as doubt, do I even have the right to say this? Sometimes as resignation, at my age it's better to stay quiet. Other times as guilt, what if I'm being selfish? But every one of those emotions isn't a flaw in you. They're layers of history, of culture, of old pain. And what I'm inviting you to do today isn't to silence them, but to look at them with kindness, to acknowledge them, and to tell yourself, even with them, yes, I can start again. Yes, there will be days when putting yourself first feels hard, days when listening without judgment takes effort, moments when your voice will tremble or when no one notices what you've done. But there will also be subtle moments when something shifts, a different look, an unexpected message, a warmer conversation. And if you keep showing up, not as a demand but as an act of love, those moments will multiply. You are not alone in this. Many women are beginning this very same journey, some with close relationships, others with broken ties, others from afar, but all with the same longing, to reclaim their place, not as self-sacrificing mothers, but as whole women. And this is where everything you've heard becomes a commitment, not to anyone else, but to yourself. Because none of this means anything unless you choose to make it a way of life, not a perfect one, not an ideal one, just an authentic one, just yours. In a moment, I'll guide you through an image to take all of this into your heart and close this path together. But before that, I want you to know this. There's no mistake that can't be healed with new presence. No distance that can't be shortened with a clear voice. No child who, in some corner of their soul, doesn't long to see again the woman who inspires respect, just by how she carries herself. And you can be that woman, even if today it feels far away. The journey of restoring respect begins with respecting yourself again, and that journey has already begun. Maybe after everything you've just heard, a part of you is still wondering if it's really possible. If it's true that 5 habits can bring your child's respect back. And I'm not here to promise miracles or paint perfect endings. I'm here to remind you of something you may have forgotten. You weren't made to live in the shadows. You were made to shine through your presence, to live your story with dignity, to keep inspiring, even now, even today. Respect isn't something you bargain for. It's not something you beg for. It's something you plant through small, consistent, intimate acts. And that's exactly what this journey has given you. 5 ways to return to yourself, to reclaim your center, to remind your child without ever saying it that you are alive, that your voice matters, that your presence makes a difference. None of what we've talked about requires a grand plan. It only asks that you start with something. A gesture, a decision, a new kind of silence, or a word you used to swallow. That first step can be today, this afternoon, tonight, as you think about tomorrow. Maybe the habit that speaks to you the most is finding your voice again. Or maybe what you most need now is to put yourself first. It doesn't matter which one you choose. What matters is that you make it your own, that you live it truthfully. Because when an older woman reconnects with her worth, the world around her, including her child, begins to respond in a new way. And if at any point you feel like you're running out of strength, come back to this conversation. Come back to yourself, to your story, to everything you've carried quietly, because all of it matters. All of it deserves to be honored. Now I want to invite you to do one more thing. If this touched you, if you feel that something inside you has shifted, leave a comment with the phrase, "I return to myself." Those 3 words aren't just a gesture, they're a declaration. A way of saying, I'm here, I'm starting, I see myself again, myself. And if there's someone in your life, a sister, a friend, a neighbor, who might need this message, share it with her. We never know when a single word can arrive just in time and change a story. Be the one who brings it. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for trusting. Thank you for continuing to look for ways to live this stage with more truth and more light. And remember, this conversation doesn't end here. On your screen now, you'll see 2 new videos that can walk with you. Maybe one of them is your next step. I'll be right here, as always, walking beside you.